Look at that after we talk about our WISP mistakes.
Yes.
Timely start of tax season. I know this is usually the little calm before the storm as those W-2s are finally starting to come out. I'm here with the illustrious Mandy Sullivan. For those of you that have been with us before, you know Mandy and I team up on a lot of these and love talking with our accounting friends. So today we are going to be talking about our top five things that we see with firms. And Mandy, I know you see this every day, and I see it from time to time. So this should be a good conversation.
Absolutely.
So, so we'll start out, thanks everybody. Like I mentioned, this is kind of the calm before the storm. I know for a lot of you, you are just getting prepared for the chaos that tax season brings. Whether you're helping people with year-end close or you're setting up to do the taxes for them. Tax season, it puts pressure on absolutely everything from people to your processes that you've put in place. It really pressure tests those and your systems that are in place. If you experience some growth during tax season from your teams, you might have some infrastructure demands that you uncover. So absolutely stress everywhere on all three legs of that stool that you use to keep your business afloat, people, process, and tools. And so, this talk today isn't designed to scare anyone. It's really just to give some practical clarity around what your WISP requirements are, that written information security plan, where it starts, what those top five things we see as gaps within accounting firms. And so we're going to talk about those gaps and we're going to talk about some practical ways that you can fill those gaps if they apply to you and help reduce your risk and strengthen compliance. So our expectations are that this is going to be about alignment within your firm, not perfection. It's going to be about practical, simple steps that you can take that may not require great big enterprise level security controls, but might be something much simpler that you can do to reduce that risk, and how small gaps can create outsized risk, really not proportional to the gap itself, but the significant risk that it can pose. So let's start with why tax season changes things for you in terms of your risk profile so dramatically. So, like we talked about, tax season amplifies everything. You have more client emails, you have more file sharing going on, there's more urgency around accessing file shares. And remember, that's one of the red flags that we talk about when it comes to phishing is urgency and urgency to open attachments. So, tax season is going to amplify all of that for you. You also may be adding temporary staff during this time of year, which means you have people that may not have the same awareness in your security culture that you've been forming over the years within your firm. You may have some new tools. Your clients may have some new tools they're asking you to use. All of that creates new risk for you. Or you may even be offering a new service to your clients, which has your team accessing more data than they perhaps would typically. We know that you have access to a ton of personally identifiable information like those EINs and social security numbers and payroll data, especially. And I think all of that sets the stage for today's discussion. So for your firm to grow, compliance isn't just going to be a checkbox anymore. It's really going to be the foundation for scaling safely. And remember, documented compliance is what allows your firm to grow safely. It helps to de-risk that growth. And your written information security plan, you're going to hear us call it a WISP all hour today. So that WISP is meant to support your operations, not slow your firm down. That combination of pressure and sensitive data is exactly why firms are top targets this time of year as well. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Mandy.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
The thing about it is that I think when firms take a look at the WISP and they go to the IRS website, they see that template, I think they get way overwhelmed. And it doesn't need to be as big as the IRS website template is. You just have to have certain things documented. And unfortunately, it's no longer optional. It's a regulatory requirement. The IRS requires it for firms that handle taxpayer data, and the FTC requires it for any sort of financial institutions. So you have to have it. And we're hoping to really just make it easier for you. And just having the WISP done and put in your desk is unfortunately not enough. You need to make sure that it's up to date, it's copied, and it's like in alignment with what your firm actually does, and it's not just verbatim from what the template says. It should match your technology stack, such as cloud apps, remote access, MFA, backups, and as well as your remote your staff structure. So remote staff, contractors, and seasonal workers. You need to have all of that in your WISP. Um, the best practice too is to review it annually. And if there's any like updated changes, say you hire somebody new, you change IT providers, you're going to want to make sure that you just update that in your WISP.
Yeah, you're spot on. The FTC and IRS have put so much care into creating their requirements and their recommendations over the
Mhm.
past several years. I know the IRS came out with their Security 6 that we're going to talk about a couple of years ago. The FTC followed suit, and when you do sort of a visual mapping of the technology requirements for both, they almost align perfectly. It's like the two organizations are talking together, and it's the same thing that we saw with our highly regulated friends that are registered investment advisors. We're seeing the same journey for accounting now. It's that journey started, I want to say about 4 years ago, right, Mandy? Does that feel right? Like
Yeah.
2022-ish for the IRS.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the FTC followed suit a couple of years later. And so, the important thing to remember is that your WISP, yes, it's a document, but it's a document that can help you identify gaps in your security policy, that can help prevent business interruption, loss of trust from your clients, or worse, a closed business.
Well, and now even jail time. I mean, if you do not have a WISP and something happens, you can go to jail, the firm owner.
There's all kinds of risks and they vary by state. I know California is one of the strictest with some of the heaviest financial penalties that can be associated as well.
Yep.
So the most common gaps that we find within firms are extremely fixable. That's like the main thing I want to start today with is the top five things that we find are fixable. These are not huge things that take massive budgets to resolve. So we're going to talk through them and talk about some specific fixes as we go, things that you can apply. And I just want to frame this with a reminder of how your WISP comes to be. It's really a document that's created after you've identified where your risks exist. So it's a template that helps you to think about things you may not think about on a daily basis as it relates to who has access, how they access, whether or not there are multiple factors of authentication, that 2FA, that double check. And those risks really are going to be rooted in six key technology, people, and process realms or areas. And that's again, if we go back to the IRS Security 6 and we talk about the FTC technology and policy requirements, it's all going to align here. So we're talking about things like secure or limited access to data, business continuity measures like backup plans, threat hunting for those endpoints, employee awareness training, multi-factor, and secure internet traffic. So those are going to be the six main realms that we're kind of talking about as we were putting a WISP together. And then today's focus is about these top five areas that we see. So let's talk about the first and most common mistake. Mandy, you hinted at it, outdated WISP. Um, it's a newer requirement, and what we see firms do more often than not is they check the box. Okay, we have a WISP, and then they just sort of file it away and think that they're done. And that's going to be the most common mistake. So a WISP written once and then forgotten about is not compliant. Mandy, you recommend an annual review. I think the FTC recommends the same. The only caveat to that would be a major technology shift in your firm. So if you move from having on-premises servers to being in the cloud, I'd qualify that as a major technology shift. That would be a good reason to go back and update that WISP mid-year. So that would be one. This is definitely the thing that we see most commonly. That WISP just doesn't match reality. So it doesn't match the people, the access, the systems that are in use, and the things that are in place to mitigate that risk. Um, Mandy, you see how this shows up in real conversations all the time with firms. What do you find with mistake number two, access?
So I find that one of the most common gaps is that they're missing multi-factor authentication on their email, on their remote access, cloud applications, and admin portals. So let's look at weak access controls like this. Access controls are the front door to your firm. If you don't control who gets in, when they get in, and when they are removed, you're leaving the firm exposed no matter how good your security is. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is make sure you add multi-factor authentication everywhere. If someone can log in with just a username and password, that system is already at risk, especially in accounting firms where credentials are heavily targeted. The second thing you're going to want to do is really remove shared access. So I know sometimes you're charged by seats. I would remove that. It's not safe. If everyone has admin or office user, you can't answer who accessed the data, you can't answer who made the change, and you can't access who should have had access to it in the first place. The third thing you're going to want to put in this portion is offboarding practices. As soon as an employee leaves, you need to make sure that you remove all of their access from everything. This is one of the highest areas of risk is letting employees that no longer work with you still have access to the data. And Sam, you always have such a great story about the controller from that one construction company to tell about how poor offboarding practices, how they can go bad.
Yeah, well, that one talks directly to our backup, that business continuity for
Yeah.
sure. So that's a classic story. A disgruntled controller that decided to offboard themselves, decided to offboard all the company data while they were at it, and yeah, they deleted what was on that server, and unfortunately, the backups that the company thought were running, thought safeguarded them from that sort of disaster, didn't. They didn't have a viable backup any newer than 18 months old, and this was a couple weeks before an audit. So that was a tough one to hear about, and unfortunately we weren't able to help on that because it was a on-premises unmanaged client. It was no longer a client of ours and wasn't something that we could help them recover from. But it really underscored the reason we need those good backups, and we need our offboarding practices to be dialed in. And I think that the offboarding practice also really helps to underscore the reason shared logins are so problematic, too, because if you have three people sharing a login, not only do you not have that audit trail, you also are going to have some issues when it's time to offboard someone if you don't have it clearly documented, everyone that has that password,
Right.
because that's going to create a potential gap and put some data at risk for some clients. So yeah, that's a good one. And the third, well, let's see, we've got some strategies here. So, strategies, you're going to hear things like zero trust and least privileged access. Those are going to be some common technology terms that are out in the industry. And really, what those are talking about is never trust, always verify. And that also relates directly to the multi-factor authentication Mandy was talking about, is it's that
Mhm.
extra trust layer. And it doesn't mean that we don't trust our teams. it means that we don't trust bad actors and we don't trust phishing. So we need to make sure that anytime we're logging into a business app or we're logging into an interface or a dashboard that has company or client data, that we have that extra layer, that extra check, whether it's a device compliance check like we see within our Microsoft environments, or if it's an authenticator app or even a text message with a 6-digit code. I think we're all really familiar with that one. As long as we're using passwords until we're completely passwordless in the industry, we do want to make sure MFA is everywhere. That's a great strategy. Least privileged access is another one. And Mandy, you talked about this. This was about limiting who has access to what, because not everyone in the business needs administrative access to everything. Our accounts payable teams in a small business don't need access to payroll or accounts receivable in a lot of cases. If we have somebody wearing multiple hats, great, we're going to give them access to that data. But it's important within our tools that we limit the areas of access for individual users to just the areas they need to perform their job functions. And again, that's not because we don't trust our teams. That's because we want to reduce the blast radius in the event our team's credentials get given up. And then continuous monitoring. We're going to talk about that as we go on with some of the technology strategies. But continuous monitoring, this is something that's generally done by your IT provider. So you're going to have a managed service provider in a lot of cases that's dealing with worrying about the technology side of your cybersecurity footprint. That's going to be in the best case, or maybe you have someone in-house. Maybe you're a firm that's big enough that you have a dedicated IT person that is doing all of your monitoring. They're going to do this through some tooling that's on your endpoints, looking for malicious behavior, looking for performance issues, and addressing all of that proactively. So those are going to be some strategies that are going to directly apply to the next three mistakes that we see most commonly as well. So the Security 6, this is the IRS Security 6. Mandy, you and I have been talking about this with clients for years. I think that we know these about as well as we know our names at this point.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
so the IRS says you should encrypt your data. Okay, well, we can do that. That's usually a button on a laptop, as long as you're dealing with something that's not more than 3 or 4 years old at this point. All of those Windows machines are going to have that chipset that you need to encrypt that if you're using local machines. And if you're using a cloud provider, most likely they are encrypting that data for you as well. You're going to want to have the backups. So we talked about the controller that offboarded herself and all the company data. We want to make sure that we've got good, reliable backups that we test every now and again to ensure that we've got some business continuity in the event that we get some ransomware or we get some malware or we've got some accidental deletion. We're also going to have a secure internet access. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about firewalls. We have a physical office. We should have a nice business class firewall that's being used to manage internet traffic for our teams and guests separately. So we're segregating or separating that network traffic. We're going to want a good patch management strategy. We don't want to rely on our users to run those Windows updates, folks. We want to make sure that we're managing the patches, because so often those patches have security updates that are critical to closing some holes that threat actors could leverage to backdoor right on into your network or into your device. And then a VPN, and we can talk about that. VPNs kind of get a bad rap sometimes. And they really do have very specific use cases, and they solve for very specific problems as we talk about our hybrid workforces. And that last one, that sixth one, that antivirus or managed detection and response, I think that one in particular deserves a closer look, because that's the one that's really proactive. When we talk about antivirus, we're not really talking about the old school antivirus anymore. We should be talking about services that are faster and more reliable, that are basing decisions to take action. That's another big difference between an antivirus and a managed detection and response, is the tooling has the ability to take action when it identifies a malicious process. And again, it's going to be process driven. So it's looking at the behavior that's happening on your endpoint. It's looking at each step in a process and going, whoa, this looks really familiar. This looks like something that I've seen before that led to something bad. Let's quarantine this process until we can inspect it and make a decision about whether or not it needs to be remediated or whether or not it can proceed. And it all happens so fast that your users aren't experiencing downtime as a result of all of these checks and balances. They're just working and continuing to work and often aren't even aware when something is quarantined and remediated. And so, again, we're looking for that next generation antivirus, often called a managed detection and response, or MDR, or an endpoint detection and response, EDR. We've got so many acronyms in this industry that mean different things, but we're looking for something that's rooted in AI, has a threat library that it can check against, that it's constantly learning from, and has a 24/7 um, um, process that's running that has humans behind it. So that eyes on glass is going to be the other side. We don't want to just leave it up to the tool. We want that human management on the other side. So that's a technology piece, but as we know, technology alone isn't going to be enough.
Right. But before we get on to the employee training, going back to that MDR versus just a regular antivirus, we had a firm that come on with us last year. And prior to coming on, they were concerned about our MDR solution slowing down their computers. So they wanted to do a test on it just to see if it was going to cause any issues with their workflow because they've had previous ones in the past that have caused issues. So they wanted to do a test. So we put 10 people on there. They were a firm of like 75. We put 10 people on um, our MDR solution as a test for 1 month. And in the first 2 weeks, we came across 12 different antiviruses or 12 different viruses that were on their computers that our solution just went ahead and fixed without them even knowing. That's what's so great about it is there's no downtime. If it sees something suspicious, if through knowing the patterns of other viruses that have worked around the world, it automatically removes it for you. So and we took that back to them and they couldn't believe it. They were shocked because they had no idea that they had any sort of viruses on their computers. But that was just in that first 2 weeks, doing a test on 10 of them.
That's right. I remember that. That was a brilliant
Mhm.
case study. I mean, it
Yeah,
really highlighted the power of that AI driven tooling.
absolutely it does. But you can have the best technology in the world like that MDR, but really your employees and training your employees is the most important thing, and it's the cheapest thing. I mean, it's free, essentially. You can do it to look for bad actors or how to look at emails. So both the IRS and the FTC require that you have train employees security awareness at least annually. And you need to educate the staff on how to recognize phishing and social engineering. Your training must be documented in your WISP. So you can't just say that you did it. You need to actually document it, write it down. Um, because phishing is the number one entry point into accounting firms, even more during tax season. And the reason why it's so much bigger during tax season is they know that you're handling client sensitive data, W-2s, bank accounts. They know you're working under tight timelines and that you're busy. And they know that staff are usually conditioned to just open attachments and click links. So, a real world scenario of what could happen, like if you don't train your staff on being diligent on looking at emails, is a staff member receives an email that appears to come from a familiar vendor, client, internal employee. The message references tax documents or a secure file that are urgent and they need to get this taken care of immediately. The email looks good, the logo looks good, so they click on it, they give in their Microsoft credentials. From there, what's going to happen is that bad actor is going to immediately set a rule that is going to no longer send replies to your inbox. and they're going to start sending out emails to all of your clients, to anybody else that you've talked to on there, trying to phish them. Then they have access to all the financial data that is on your computer. They have access, um, to your clients' bank accounts. And so there could be money that goes awry, or there could be other data that's compromised. So, really train your employees. They are your frontline firewall. Teach them how to look at emails, teach them to be conscious about that kind of thing, even whenever it's busy tax season, because it really is the easiest way for bad actors to get into accounting firms' data.
Yeah, and I think, Mandy, I'll share another real world example. Going back to your MFA. So the awareness helps them know what not to click on to avoid those phishing attacks. But this also goes back to that multi-factor authentication and how critical it is. We had a firm share with us that one of their employees' credentials had been compromised through a phishing attack, and they did not have multi-factor authentication on their SaaS-based, their web-based tax software that they used. And the bad actor went in to the tax software, and they went into different clients and changed the bank account to which the returns were meant to go
Wow.
to. So there wasn't, there were no major changes. They weren't stealing data. They were simply updating the bank account to which the IRS would direct deposit those returns. And all of that would have been stopped had the awareness training been happening and they knew what to look for. And had that failed, had 2FA, that multi-factor authentication, been turned on, would have been a much smaller likelihood that they could have bypassed that and initiated those changes to those bank accounts. So yeah, I think that the awareness training that you're talking about, the multi-factor that you talked about earlier, those are two really small changes that can make just a huge impact.
Absolutely. Look at MGM, not having MFA there, shut MGM down for days. They lost millions and millions of dollars because of not having multi-factor authentication turned on.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Hmm.
It's crazy. But then what happens if something happens?
So I think this is where people get really nervous because they don't want to plan doom and gloom of what could happen, what they need to do. But it's really better to have it planned. So you need to have an incident response plan. Both the IRS and the FTC expect firms to have this prepared. So let's talk about what actually is the incident response plan. Basically, it's a document, step-by-step playbook that answers what is considered a security incident, who is responsible for responding, what actions are taken first, and who must be notified and when. What it really does is removes the panic and guesswork during high stress times if an incident should happen. Firms without an incident response plan often delay in responses while debating what to do, accidentally destroy evidence, and fail to notify the right parties. In the event that there is an incident, um, let's go through that. So you need to define the incident. This is a clear definition of what qualifies as an incident. Phishing compromise, ransomware, unauthorized access, data loss, or exposure. The next thing you need to have in your incident response plan is roles and responsibilities in the event of an incident. That's who does what. Firm leadership, what do they need to do? IT security providers, what they need to do, what your lawyers need to do, and what compliance needs to be contacted. And then you also need to have a communication point of contact person set. So, pro tip here is I would recommend already having written emails created, templates. So, in the event that there is an incident, those templates are already created. To contact the IRS, to contact local police, to contact your clients. Those templates are already created. You can just grab them from the folder and get them sent out. Um, when the incident happens, speed is the most important thing. So the first, you want to make sure that you identify that incident quickly. You want to make sure that the employees, if they see anything suspicious, that they report it immediately as well. speaking of this, the other day I had our spam email comes in every day at 3 o'clock. And when it comes in, it's basically a list of all the emails that our company had quarantined from the day. And I realized that in the spam quarantine, there was an email from myself from our old Swissnet account. And so I was like, man, that's interesting. If that's coming to me, I hope this isn't going out to all of our clients, like from msullivan at swissnet.com. So I reached out to our security department and they said that thanks for letting them know that that is a really bad virus that is going around right now. And thank God our quarantine that, our spam filter quarantine that, and they put rules in to stop that. But yeah, if I would have clicked on that, our whole thing would have been in, our whole system would have been infected. So, those training the employees, making sure they know what to do whenever a suspicious behavior occurs.
Yeah, and then I think that beyond just not having an incident response plan, the other thing that we've seen is folks that have one never practice it. So
Yep.
Mandy, you nailed it. Speed is of the essence when a breach or a security incident is identified. And so just taking a little bit of time once a year to walk back through that incident response plan, everybody's reminded of their roles and depending on the scope or scale of the breach or the incident, that's also going to define whether or not you're reaching out to your IRS contact or if you're reaching out the FTC or state attorney general, and every state will be a little bit different. So just having that little practice session, I think, really helps solidify this mistake and closing that gap. Just walking through a tabletop exercise once a year.
Yeah, unfortunately, these days a cyber incident it isn't a matter of if it happens, it's kind of when it happens. So it's best to just have the incident response plan and you know what to do, how to handle it, and you can get it done quickly.
Yeah, 100%. And we've been talking about some real world scenarios as we've gone on here. One thing that we see all the time, especially in smaller firms, is there is one person that's more or less designated to be the spam filter. Anybody that gets a suspicious looking email, they're going to forward it. And let's pick on Mandy and send it to Mandy and say, Mandy, is this safe? Should I open this? So some of the things that we didn't really talk about today that I think are going to be relevant as you're thinking about your firm's processes is going to be around what your rules are for attachments via email. A lot of firms are moving in the direction of having client portals where they can upload the documentation that you need to prepare their year end, file their taxes and they have a flat rule that says we don't accept attachments. Some even go to such extremes as setting up email rules that will auto respond to anyone that sends them an attachment that says your email's been deleted. We don't accept attachments. Please use the following link to upload your documents securely. So there's a spectrum of responses and decisions on how firms are going to deal with that sort of thing. As a best practice, it's definitely ideal to use a practice management tool that allows for the uploading of those documents securely. If you are going to accept attachments, make sure that you've got some policies around what kinds of attachments, and you definitely have a solid security awareness training plan in place so that your employees know what kinds of attachments not to attempt to open, such as those HTML file extensions. Those are notoriously bad. And you can even have badness in what would otherwise be secure with some fileless attacks that exist. So definitely ransomware is going to be one of your top concerns. Phishing is going to be one of your top concerns. The awareness training, that multi-factor authentication are going to be a couple of things you can do to safeguard against the business stoppage, the outages that can happen as a result of that. And then backups. You want backups everywhere that you can have backups, and that's going to include your G Suite or your Microsoft Suite. It's an inexpensive thing that you can turn on so that you've got a backup of your mail and calendars and documents that you have in your OneDrive or SharePoint or your Google Drive. Because in the event that you do have a cyber event and you need to be able to restore from another point in time, those backups become ultra critical. In the same way that you make sure that you back up your QuickBooks, you want to be backing up everything else as it relates to client data, firm data. So we've talking about real world scenarios that have caused work stoppage, loss of trust, and in some cases, in business closure. So we want to make sure our teams are trained. We're turning on 2FA. We know what we're going to do in the event of a response, and we've got backups so that we've got some business continuity. So I think that when we talk about real world strategies, those are going to be a few of the top ones for me. Mandy, any others that are top of mind for you?
No, I think you covered it there.
Yeah, so it's really a focus on your people, who has access to what and how, processes, and then the technology that you use to close up some of those technology gaps that you have.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we didn't talk about was vendors. I think,
Mm.
going back to the vendors, we should cover that. So if you have vendors that have access to your data, like your IT provider or um, I can't think of any other examples right off the top of my head, but you want to check in with those vendors annually too to make sure that they are doing their due diligence to secure the data as well. You can ask for, like, we have companies that come to us, ask for our SOC 2 all the time. So you want to make sure that your vendors are doing their due diligence, and protecting the client's data too if they have access.
That's a good one. I think sometimes consultants are the ones that I see pretty commonly within firms as well. Consultants that have access to ERPs or are doing contract work during the busy times, making sure that you have documented what security protocols are in place on their end if it's something outside of your control. That's a great one, Mandy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've already kind of talked about all this, but really, the steps to strengthen your WISP is, if your WISP says you have MFA on it, then make sure you have MFA on. You want to make sure that your WISP is accurate on the technology that you're using, the staff roles, your IT providers, and you want to review this at least annually. But if you have any changes during the year, say you go to a new IT provider, you're going to want to make sure that you update the WISP. As far as employee training in the WISP, you're going to want to define how the training happens, how often it happens. If you send random phishing email test to see if they click on that, you're going to want to make sure that you have the incident response plan in there. Um, then, it's not really meant to be complicated. I know it sounds complicated, but it's really just documenting all the security protocols and procedures that your staff put in. MFA, employee training, incident response plan, technology vendors, backups. That's the other one. So really just documenting all that into one document. That's pretty much your WISP.
Yeah, and the great news on awareness training is it's not like you have to hire a consultant to come in and sit down and take half a day to do it with your teams anymore.
Yeah.
Awareness trainings come so far. There are entire learning platforms that track progress and provide reports that are fantastic, especially for those insurance renewals, being able to provide evidence that the awareness training is happening and the click prone percentage of your team is declining with time and training. All of that helps with those cyber liability insurance renewals as well.
Absolutely.
Um, so I guess to bring us home, we talked about updating the WISP annually. Mandy, you called it out, documenting what's in place, and then making sure that you've got some sort of checks and balances that what you're saying is being done is actually being done. MFA is the biggest one that we see pretty frequently, where people say that, oh yeah, we use MFA, but then it's not on everywhere. So maybe it's on for QuickBooks Online, maybe it's on for the banks, but it's not on for Microsoft or G Suite, for example. So making sure that when we say multi-factor authentication is on, it's on everywhere that the business or client data exists. We're verifying that we're meeting the security six if we're a tax firm, that we're talking about VPNs and firewalls and data encryption. And again, those are things that can be pretty simply implemented. We are testing our teams, so we're sending out those simulations for phishing attempts and tracking who is and isn't being tricked into clicking on those links. And we're confirming that we've got some business continuity with our backups, and we're testing that incident response plan to make sure it A, meets our requirements as a firm, and B, our teams know what their roles and responsibilities are in the event of an incident. So those are the big areas to look at as a firm as we ramp into tax season. These are also great end of year practices. So we talk about this a lot, October through December, and then again here in January, just at the front end of tax season as a reminder.
Absolutely. So we do have a cybersecurity checklist here that you can go through for for tips for small businesses. You can use it. You can also use it, give it off to your clients so that they have some security awareness as well. And then if you're not 100% confident that your WISP reflects how your firm operates today, we're happy to review it with you. We're happy to walk through it, make sure that it's aligned with what you have in place, and see if there's any gaps that need to be taken care of. Because, those gaps are required to be filled before you mark that P10. So we are happy to meet with you, walk through your WISP, see if there's any gaps, and make sure that you are good to go for this tax season. Do anybody have any questions?
There's been a couple throughout that we've answered, but I don't see any new ones. So if anyone would like to reach out, continue the conversation, talk about some specifics for your firm, feel free to reach out to us. Oh, there's a funny line in that. I didn't realize that before, but it's insidesalesadvisory.net's going to be that email address. Or if I see a few familiar names, if you have our direct emails, feel free to reach out to us individually, and we'd love to talk with you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.